Back in late 2019, an indie VR game came out called Boneworks, and it revolutionized VR games. It was a quick, fast-paced VR FPS with an advanced physics system. And while critics weren't too impressed with the game still had public hype. With its popularity, stress level 0, the developer decided to make another one. This time, they would call it Bonelab. Eventually, it got announced, and I followed on it a little bit just to see what it was. I didn't see too much hype around it, and then it came out on September 29th, and then all of a sudden, the hype is unbelievably real. Obviously not as much hype as maybe some other VR games like Half-Life Alyx, but still, it was pretty hyped up. And having played it, and having, I think, the appropriate amount of time to review it, I will do just that. Before we start, I want to say that I played on the Oculus Quest 2, but I played through the Steam VR version, not the Oculus Quest 2 port. Now, that port might be a bit different from the PC version, and if it is, tell me what I missed, because I probably would have missed it. There will also be chapters and timestamps on the video as well for the different sections of the review you might want to see. Also, all of the gameplay in this video is mine, and I recorded it just for this video. But without further ado, let's get into the review of Bonelab. You first start out on a menu showing your virtual hands in this world, and also showing off the menu screen and giving you the introduction to Bonelab. Now you're just an invisible avatar waiting in an area with a dice, and then you roll it, and then you get an avatar which looks like a medieval peasant, apparently. Once you get to your new avatar, there will be a red button on the thing, and then once you click it, you go somewhere. And then this happens, you see a rope, and then you have to put it over your neck. And it's very realistic, might I add. And then it shows you hanging in what looks like a medieval gallows, with a bunch of people around you waiting for your execution. But then some dagger shows up, and then you cut the rope, and then you fall down into a cave and find a torch. Okay, now, this feels like too much, honestly. First off, you have to put it around your neck, and it's a VR game, so it basically feels like you're putting it around your neck. Some people were really offended by this, as expected, and it started this whole thing. Now, personally, I'm not too offended by it, but I feel like there should be at least a warning to take it out, kind of like the No Russian mission from Modern Warfare 2. A similar thing happened with Super Hot VR, where they had two scenes. I couldn't find it, but basically, the two scenes had a character shooting themselves and jumping off of a building. They took these out of the game instead of adding an option to take it out yourself. Anyway, with that whole thing out of the way, you then go through a dungeon, knock over a skeleton, and walk through some walls. You're eventually just walking there, a little bit confused on what's happening, and then find some more stuff. At this moment, I experienced a pretty weird bug. You're supposed to break through these boards with an axe. Then I put my torch in an inventory, and then the whole game just kind of soft-locked in a way. And then this happened. You can see it on the screen, and I can't describe it, but yeah, this happened, basically. You then fall down somewhere into this area with a blue key. There's an orb, which are the collectibles of Bonelab. They can be used to unlock props, weapons, NPCs, and other stuff for the sandbox mode. And in the original Boneworks, you had to take this stuff to the end of the level, but in this one, you just grab them and then do that. And a lot of people were pretty confused, but I wasn't, because I saw something like it in the trailer. But I feel like it should give you like a tutorial or something. And then you walk through here and then kill this poor guy. You then get your first gun and then test it on these guys. After that, you then go through a subway and then see some of the no-body enemies and also the VR head crabs. And you just fight through them, and really that's it. You're then in a container yard where you fight your first armed enemies. Now, if it feels like I'm going fast, that's because I am, because it's practically just a bunch of rooms put together. The rooms feel very small and linear compared to Boneworks. You're just in one, and then you just move on to the next suddenly. Eventually, after you're just walking around a bit, you find an elevator, and then this happens. You're just falling, and then eventually the screen just goes black, and then you're teleported somewhere. When you wake up, you then have to pry the elevator door, which shows you the Bonelab hub. There's different modes, which I'll talk about later, but I'm not going to list them all here. Because right now, I'm still talking about the campaign, and this leads into something very annoying. You're supposed to get these orbs and then put them in these holders to unlock the door. Now, what you're supposed to do is actually visit each of the modes and then leave, and then it'll be unlocked. And it doesn't tell you this, so I was stuck on here for like an hour, and I was really confused. And I eventually had to look it up. And some people didn't even know that there was a campaign just because of this. Anyways, after this, there's a few more running and gunning sections with puzzles. And then you get to this part that's a ride. Now, the ride's actually pretty cool. It's one of those target shooting things. It's pretty immersive and actually fun. You don't necessarily have to get a specific score, and since this was in VR, I didn't really hit that much. And also because I was busy hitting this thing around. But I feel like most of the moments in this campaign should have been things like this, because the rest of it is just walking through rooms with no real purpose, and there isn't that much to do. After this is the point where the campaign begins to change. You're walking through this area, and you get a shotgun, which was never in the original Boneworks, and it's pretty good to use. I used it like the original Doom. I always love a well-done shotgun in video games, and in Bonelab they did do that. Eventually you come across this big guy named Jimmy. He's actually been talking on radios to us throughout the whole game. This is where things really change now, because you get the avatar system, which was one of the main selling points of the game and one of the key features of the trailer. You get this one that reminds me of Francis from Left 4 Dead. This ninja waifu. Discount Doom guy. Space Bingus. Another waifu. And this tall guy who literally looks like an SCP. These avatars have their own introduction levels, and they're really not the best. You start out with an actually good one with the biker avatar thing, where you just go on the streets and then kill a bunch of guys. It's not necessarily the most creative thing, but it is pretty fun. While you're doing it, you got the soundtrack as well that absolutely slaps and is amazing. People say that this level feels a lot like something like Hotline Miami. I can't say anything about that because I've never played Hotline Miami, but it definitely feels like it from what I've seen. Then I have this one, which is basically just the bridge from Highway 17 in Half-Life 2. This is the introduction level for the ninja waifu thingy. It basically just feels like Mirror's Edge, but like really janky. And I mean really janky. It's a good introduction. The level isn't terrible, but still not impressive. You then got the level for Discount Doom guy. Now, it is fun. Picking up guys and throwing them with the Boneworks physics engine is absolutely amazing in VR. But you just sit here and protect this thing for like about 3 minutes. And then it's just suddenly over. I think that there should have been more substance to make it seem like an actual introduction to the avatar. For your introduction level for the short avatar, it's walking on the moon with low gravity. This level is just flat out terrible. Jumping like Mario and shooting guns in space is cool at first, but you have no direction on where to go. You're just really confused on what's happening. You find a structure, get the avatar for your body log, and that's it. You got the raceway for the light waifu avatar, which is an avatar which has literally no point other than just being there. And this is the only part where you get to drive a vehicle, so you just do it this one time, and you never do it again. Plus, this level is extremely frustrating because of the controls. From my gameplay in the background, you could see how much I've been suffering from this. I've even seen people who had the car flip over and they couldn't get it back up. So then they just walked all the way over there to the end. And then finally, you got the absolute worst one, which is pillar climb. You have these butterfly things that when they touch you, it just automatically changes your avatar. This causes tons of glitches and gets annoying real fast. Also mentioning the fact that when you get to the top of this, there's a stupid amount of these, and then when you die, you have to start all the way at the beginning of the level again, only to take 5 minutes to get up there, possibly even more. Once you've completed all these levels, Jimmy will give you a key used for a room that was locked away in the Bonelab hub. It's a room with a Boneworks crate in it, like from the first game. The door opens and you have to destroy the crate. Once the crate gets destroyed, you just fly up into the air. These parts mostly have you pushing boulders and killing more enemies. There is this pretty cool part which has you killing a bunch of guys in a room with this new shotgun you found. It's pretty fun using. It's a pump shotgun which adds more to the realism. And also, it just feels really fun to use. The overall looks and size of this room too, as well, also make the level really cool, just walking into. After this, there's another room like this with more Nullmen. Also pretty cool looking. You got a transit station, which is where most of the launch trailer was recorded. You run away from a train, and you could even throw enemies into there. It's pretty interesting and actually cool. And very suspenseful too, running away from the train. After this, you go back to the medieval village from the beginning. While you're there, you absolutely demolish everyone and basically kill everything in your path. Go through this bar and eventually find the exit to this medieval fantasy land. This is where things get a little bit weird now. You're in a plain grass field, and then you climb this fan. Then you just find a giant hand coming from the sky. You grab onto the finger, and then you're eventually lifted up into this white void thing. You then see a taxi with Jimmy inside of it. Now, he's supposed to take you somewhere, and you hear him speaking about something, including some of the lines heard at the beginning of the game. But then, once you get in, you see some stuff like there's stickers referencing duck season. You also see the ID of the player character from Boneworks, and just some random little other side stickers. You're just driving in the taxi with him, and then you see some of the credits. You hear his dialogue as well, which is mostly just the same stuff. They do, however, give special thanks to Valve, most likely just for allowing them to be putting it on Steam and also the Valve Index as well. You then arrive at the menu, and that was it. That was the whole campaign. I personally thought that this campaign was mediocre and kind of underwhelming. It didn't have that much groundbreaking moments, and it kind of just felt like Boneworks, but a little bit worse. Once the avatar system was complete, it started to get really good at the end, and then the campaign just ended. Might I add that the campaign is 4 to 5 hours long. Boneworks' campaign was about 7 to 10 hours long. I don't know why they made it shorter. The soundtrack is also kind of disappointing. Most of it is just recycled from Boneworks, but the ones that are still there aren't that good either. They don't sound that good, and also they just are a bit forgettable outside of the Street Puncher one. The story and lore of it too also just is really confusing and doesn't make that much sense. It pulls the same strategy that the first Destiny did. That meaning you have questions at the beginning, and then those questions are basically never answered. Who are these characters? Who are you? What is even happening? Where am I? None of those questions ever get answered, so you're just there absolutely having no idea. After this, we then get into the true magic of Bonelab, the side modes. Earlier I mentioned in the Bonelab hub that there are these different side modes that you can go to. You have the arena mode, which was in the original Boneworks, but in here it's given a lot more depth. While you're doing these as well, you can also swap between avatars. I use the dog from Duck Season in the arena mode at the start, because there are actually hidden avatars in this game. I'm not going to go over all of them, but good luck finding them. You got the sandbox mode, which is where I think I spent most of my time. Yet again, it's the same one from Boneworks, but given a lot more depth, given more guns, more props, which you can unlock from the collectibles from the campaign that I talked about earlier. Most people use this mode to create random clips that they used using the NPCs. I even attempted at making my own. It's interesting. But actually though, people can make some pretty cool stuff using this mode. Or you could just spawn in a bunch of NPCs and just mess around with it and go crazy. You then have TAC trials, which is mostly just handgun ranges, courses, etc. I didn't spend too much time with this because it wasn't really my thing, and I'd much prefer doing something like arena or sandbox, but it's good for what it is. I could tell you could spend a little bit of time here. As practically all gun ranges are used for, it's mostly just used for target practice, and really that's about it. Not much else. You then got parkour, which is running and climbing. Surprise. Of all the side modes, this one is probably my least favorite, given the fact that I didn't like the parkour level in the campaign that I mentioned earlier. That's not to say it's all bad though. There are some parts that are actually pretty cool, just jumping from building to building and fighting every guy, but it does get a little bit tedious and janky. However, I could still totally see why someone would like this mode. It definitely is unique. You got experimental, which is just pure randomness. And last but certainly not least is mods. You got avatars ranging from Saul Goodman to Batman to Doom Guy. You also got mods that add different maps and different modes. You also have weapon mods too. I personally have not tried any mods for Bonelab just yet, but embracing mods is always a good thing for literally any game. Just look at something like Minecraft, Gary's Mod, or Left 4 Dead 2 for example. But after this is where the real question starts about this whole game. How do I feel, and is this actually a good sequel to Boneworks? If I'm being honest, I've never felt so conflicted with a game like this. The game itself is actually pretty good. However, it is really disappointing in some ways. Mostly the campaign. It feels more like an expansion to Boneworks more than its own actual game. There's a few more enemies, a few more weapons, and of course the body log avatar system. And that was about it. It kind of just feels like the same as Boneworks, but worse. To me, Boneworks is one of the best VR games of all time, and in some ways even outrivals something like Half-Life Alyx. It was just because of how groundbreaking it was and how fun it was and how different it was. However, Bonelab just kind of is just the same thing and doesn't really do much too new for virtual reality as a whole. Would I recommend this game though? If you have a Quest 2 and don't have access to a PC, yes, you should totally play this game since you've never played Boneworks. If you just want more Boneworks and already have played the original, go ahead, it's good. But however, if you want something completely groundbreaking and different, I would say this is a no-go. That's just how I feel about the game though. If you've played it and have a VR headset, tell me what you thought of it. Have you played Boneworks before? Do you think that Bonelab was pretty much better than it in every single way? Please feel free to share your own thoughts in the comments. I'm all up for it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I've been working on it a while for the past 3 days, and I honestly think it's turned out to be my best video on the channel so far. This is my first video on the channel outside of the FNAF Plus video that made me feel really proud of it. And I'm glad. Thanks to you guys for supporting the channel. And hopefully you like these sort of game reviews that I do. I'm planning on doing way more of them. But with that said and done, thank you for watching this video.